this 95, 96, getting into the Loaded era that always interests me about you because, and it remains till today, you always, it seems that you're regularly working, putting out music, doing stuff all the time, whether it's for you or producing people or doing a collaborative album. Do you remember why and how this kind of super workaholic thing kicked in, or how did that happen?
Well, I finally got my own enough money to get a studio. I got a studio inside. I rented out a studio and bought all the equipment. That just made me work. And Beta, he was working a lot with me. He produced, as you know, he produced this Loaded album. I know him before we got there, but he produced the whole Loaded album. And during that time, we just started creating songs to where even 2 and 3 years ago, I was dropping unreleased songs when before I signed with BMG and stuff. I was really just sitting there, not really doing anything. And Don was like, my manager was like, let's go ahead and drop some of the unreleased songs because you are not doing anything right now. So I've had songs from when I used to work way back then. So it's just having the studio, having my own studio made me just work on so much music.
Interesting. And then why then, around this time then, why from Season of Siccness to Loaded did you not produce Loaded since you had been producing yourself the whole time?
Well, after Season, I said I wasn't going to produce until my very last album before I retired. And I haven't done that yet. So,
but why'd you have that idea, or why'd you want to do it that way?
Because I didn't want to be my own producer. I wanted to get beats from Dre and beats from, these other bigger producers. But I just wanted to prove, and I didn't even have the idea at that time. The idea was in the last 6 or 7 years that I'm going to produce my last album. That's when I came up with the idea. And it's only because to see if I could do it again.
Okay. Because
I've been practicing on production my whole career too, just for that moment. But I never put any of my beats on my album yet.
Well, that's something that I've been wondering about this whole time, because the people that know your earlier work like I do, I was just like, man, why did he stop producing? Because you had such good beats. And then
takes long too.
Yeah, it's a lot longer. You got to do it. Yeah, when you have to do everything, it takes longer.
Yeah. So that was a lot of work working on Season. Oh my God. And I said, I'm not doing that again until my very last album.
So that was the main takeaway from that?
Yeah, that is the only reason.
Okay. Fair enough.
Kind of lazy, but this last album, my very last album, is probably going to be my best one.
Okay. So that being said, going into Loaded, knowing you weren't going to produce it, and you got Cocaine on there, you got Ice-T, you got these different collaborations, like mentally, what was different than the 24 Deep era, the Season of the Siccness era, going into Loaded? Like, how did you approach it differently creatively?
Well, it's called Loaded. So, I just got high. I bought a lot of weed, smoked, and watched Beta make all the beats. I made one of the beats, Refuse to Lose. Okay. Yeah, Refuse to Lose. I produced that one. But every other song, Beta did it.
Okay. And how did that, what appeal, other than the lack of work, from the rapping perspective, how did that appeal to you to now be rapping over other stuff?
Well, I love Beta. Well, I love Beta beats. Like, I even loved his piano when we were 16 and he was 15. He's playing the piano. I'd tell him, play D.O.C for my mom, and he'd play it. So I already knew that if I taught him to make better drums and stuff like that, that he could produce an album. So we just went into it like that, where we had a studio, that we wasn't being charged, but monthly, and we could stay in there all day, long as we want, all night. So he just started creating. And I was really smoking a lot of weed at that time. That's why I decided to call it Loaded.
Fair enough. Okay.
Oh, different. Everybody thought I was going to come with a season type of album too. I remember they were lined up at Tower Records on Florin Road back when Tower Records were open, lined up down the street. And the next reaction after I saw him lined up to get my stuff, because I obviously went back to the store and asked him, what was that line for? And he said, that was for you. The next day, people were saying he didn't come tight on that album. But then I guess over time it grew on him. And now it's some of their favorite album, even over Season of the Siccness.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what some fans tell me.
it's very different, obviously, as you're well aware, but at the same time, it's good. So how did that affect you as a person when you heard that?
Well, I felt I made a mistake. I should have came with a harder album and then maybe calmed it down a little later on in my career. I really did feel that was a mistake though, but the album did well.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's just different, but it's not that it's bad.
I just think I changed up too quick.
But that's the thing. I'm very interested to get your opinion on this because we want artists to be great artists, but then it seems like at the same time, fans get mad if they do something they don't like. But it's like if you're like the artist, shouldn't you just listen to it first and see if you like it, as opposed to just being like, oh, it's not like what I knew him to do, so I don't like it. Like that doesn't make.
Well, yeah, and you know, but I will call it a mistake that I shouldn't have made. I don't know if it was laziness. I don't know if I wanted to blow Beta up because he was a good friend of mine and I wanted to get his name out there, and which did happen, you know. And I was high.
So then what about the cocaine and the Ice-T collaborations? When you do that, what significance did that hold for you to have them on your album, on Loaded?
Well, cocaine, I always wanted to work with him. Just because, you know, he was around the Snoops and all that, you know, the Ice Cubes and all them. So he was in that circle. So I always wanted to work with him. I didn't think I would be able to get Ice-T. And then when that happened, I was shocked. So I had to go with him, you know, and, you know, people, you know, they say he's a good rapper or whatever, but I was amped up.
Now, I think Ice-T is one of the most underrated rappers ever.
Me too. Me too.
Now, was this he would have been on Priority at the time too? Was that the connection, or do you know?
I don't know. I didn't even know he was on Priority at that time.
I think he would have been.
Wow, that's crazy. I knew Ice Cube was.
Yeah.
Mac 10 was.
Yeah.
So
okay.
That's how I met them.
So with going to Ice-T's house to make to make Seconds Away, when you were able to chop it up with him, what did you, and with cocaine, like what were you able to take from talking to each one of them?
To get more into the business side of it. Make sure my management was good. Make sure I toured a lot. Ice-T, he had most of the advice. Cocaine, we were just more of like kicking it. But Ice-T had the advice though. He told me to tour a lot. He told me, you know, obviously the same thing my boy told me, don't do the gangbanging stuff. And he told me to get more into the business side and tour a lot.
Okay. And did you heed his words immediately or not really?
Oh yeah. I set up a tour leaving that house. Oh yeah.
And was that your biggest tour at the time?
Actually, my biggest tours were with Strange.
Okay. Which we'll be getting to in a minute. One thing I never fully understand with the EPK4 or EBK4 and then Black Market, like what was happening starting at this time? It seemed like you were having problems, or I always heard different things and I never knew what the real answers were. So did things start going south with the label with EBK4? Was it before the virus, after? Like what was happening around this time?
Well, it had already season before we signed with Priority. I was already on this I want to leave black market. Who's coming with me type of thing. Priority kept me with black market a little longer because of their help. But then after that, I heard Seb was still doing some little sneaky stuff to make money. After that, I was pretty much ready to retire because I just got tired of this man taking my money. After that, I said, I'm not making any more stuff. And then some unfortunate stuff like a home invasion happened at my house, and they took stuff. And they dropped, Cedric Singleton dropped EBK4 out of stuff that he stole from that home invasion. So that wasn't even supposed to be an album. It was stuff that I was working on in my house. It ain't even studio made. I had a little play around studio at my house just to do my junk vocals before I went to the lab. And I made that there, and they got that, and they put out that album. And for some crazy reason, it did good.
Well, at this point, you had
it's good today.
Well, at that point, though, you did have a big fan base. So
yeah, but I was so upset that that album came out.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
It would be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Yo MTV Raps with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.